This is Getting Past Subtitles. I am Sean Peel,
This is DK Lee.
and this is a new week, a new series. We are going to be watching and talking about pretty much everything Thailand, giving a little love to a place that we haven't really watched movies from quite yet. Pretty much just a recap from last week. We finished up our Kurosawa series. Thank God, that was a long one. There's many more movies to watch. No, a really good experience watching that actually. Kind of like a milestone for me. Wanted to go there, but I thought it'd be interesting to kind of change directions and move into Thailand. So there's a couple films that I knew that I wanted to see, starting with this one, which is Bad Genius. Came out in 2017, directed by Poonpiriya. Um, like pronouncing these Thai names and stuff is going to be a stretch for me, so forgive me. But there's like an alias that he has because on Google there's like a different name, Nattawut, and then on IMDb like he has another name. So I wonder if he has like a pen name, but then his real name is Baz. So not sure what's going on there. But I think this was his, like on IMDb it's his first feature, but I watched an interview with him or like I saw something else to say that this was his second film. So could be his first or second, probably his second, but
He
relatively
had another film before this.
mm, a few shorts as well. I think you're right because he did a first feature and then like two producers came up with the initial idea for this film and then they brought him along to direct this film. I think that's how it went because he had worked with the studio before. So yeah, so this was a pretty popular film for Thailand. I think it's pretty big through like word of mouth, which is kind of how I heard about it. When I watched the trailer, I thought it was good, so I was pretty down for it. But it kind of made some waves internationally outside of Thailand as well. One of their biggest films outside of like Unbak. And so it came out in 2017. I don't think I saw it when it came out that year. It's either 2017 or 2018, but I did see it before it came out on Netflix. So when it came out on Netflix, I was like, oh, great. Now everybody can have access to this pretty cool film. But I thought it was really good. It is really like Hollywoody, like it really aims to like branch out to a broad audience, even outside of like Thailand
Yeah.
and to the Thai people. And if you watched it, you'll kind of see that it is very, very much of like a Hollywood like movie, very heisty for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of covers the bases in that sense. I mean, my first impressions, it's a really solid movie. It's a really enjoyable movie. Um, like I said, it's a heist film through and through, but it's refreshing for the subject that it has. So it's all about like academia and like cheating on test scores and stuff, and talks about students and takes like kind of like that mundane sort of boring aspect and really flips it to an interesting heist kind of tone, which is it's an interesting twist. Definitely never nothing that I've ever seen. How about you? How was this watch for you?
This was a very fun film to watch. I think story wise, it's a very typical story. Yeah, it takes definitely the heist genre and places it in a school setting. I feel like I've seen something like this though, similar story about cheating on a test somewhere.
Mm,
But yeah, this was done really well, I think, and I really liked a lot of the cinematography and the
yeah,
lighting of this film. Although it's very stylized, and you can
for
tell it's
sure.
very stylized, but still, I think that despite the very typical story, I think that they pulled it off really well, and I think that's what really matters. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think like everything is pretty solid. I think that's the word I can give this movie. Like it's not, crazy amazing and even the acting is solid, but some like Grace in particular I don't think is all that great, but Lin and Bank, who are like kind of the main two, are really good actors and they're really good to their role. And so overall it like really kind of solidifies the movie to be enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, like, this film doesn't tread any new ground, but I think that it does what it's supposed to do really well. So,
sticks to its guns.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'll kick it off synopsis wise. So this movie is the main character is Lin, who is a freshman transfer applying to this prestigious school. She has superb academics, but her concern with going into the school is the tuition and the excess costs that'll come with attending the school, and it kind of sways her decision, hesitating. Her father is also a teacher, and he doesn't really make much salary, so it's really beyond their costs to even go to that school. But the headmaster is kind of swayed by her superb academia and decides to waive her tuition in order for her to attend the school. So she ends up joining, and during like the picture ID, Lynn meets Grace, who ends up befriending her. And Grace is this outgoing, very initiative type of personality, but she's the opposite of Lynn in not being great at academics. So like one day, Grace wants to be an actor, basically. So she wants to get into like the drama club and be in the school play, but she doesn't have the GPA required to, be in the play or be in the club. So she asks Lynn to tutor her because she knows she's hella smart. So Lynn ends up agreeing to it, and on the day of the test, Lynn notices that the exam is actually like a perfect like 1-to-1 copy of the study material that they were given, and Lynn tries to like tell Grace that it's everything that she taught her, but Grace ends up freaking out and forgets everything. So Lynn breezes through that test and ends up having to help her out by giving her the answers on like an eraser, and helps her cheat and like slides it by switching shoes. And so Grace ends up passing the test and invites Lynn over to her boyfriend's house to kind of celebrate the occasion. Grace's boyfriend, his name is Pat. At the celebration, once Lynn meets Pat, he hears about like what he did for Grace and the stunt that he pulled to help her cheat. So Pat makes Lynn a proposition to help him and a couple of his other friends to cheat on another upcoming exam. Uh, but this time, basically, the proposition is in exchange for that, we'll pay you. So they're like, we'll give you a set amount per subject. There's like 5 subjects, and that's per student. So it's like, it's a pretty substantial amount of money. So she does the calculations and kind of agrees to it after she learns that this school also charges maintenance fees that they call like T money in addition to the tuition. So even though she's like waived the tuition fees, her dad still ends up paying the maintenance fees and kind of like does it behind her back. And it turns out to be like even more than the tuition fees. So this kind of pushes Lynn to take the offer anyway. And there's like a scene with her and her dad as she kind of comes to term with it and finds out. And she has this epiphany playing the piano that helps her plan the strategy on cheating the exam. And basically what that is a specific note or series of notes will represent a letter on a multiple choice. So like, like one sequence will be A, another sequence will be B, C, and D. So she teaches this like system to Grace and a couple of the friends. And kind of in line with this, as that scene goes on, you'll also meet Bank, who's also like the top GPA holding student. And they go on to this like TV show, like competition. I don't know if like, did you have a brain bowl when you were in high school?
Um,
I don't,
Something similar.
I don't know what you guys called it, but each school kind of has something like that, like an academic kind of like Jeopardy sort of
Yeah.
thing. So that's what they were doing. They got invited to participate, and they ended up winning as partners. And then because of that, they end up getting qualified to take a test for a scholarship, and this scholarship will basically cover overseas studying, so any school overseas or something like that. So then they become like friends to rivals because only one of them can get it if they pass the exam. So fast forward to the day of the exam, of the school exam, not the other exam. Bank notices that like a friend of his, Tong, like needs help cheating on a test and asks him, but Bank says no. And but he ends up taking like the piano course as they're calling it, and Bank notices that Tong is trying to cheat off Lin and basically like snitches. And after the test, Lin is called to the head office and basically gets caught for helping other students cheat and like cheating herself essentially. And then like the aftermath of all that is like her dad finds out about the entire money scheme and they're like not on good terms anymore, and Lin ends up being disqualified to take the test for that scholarship. Um, so yeah, so I'm gonna stop there because there's a lot that happens after the fact. What do you think of like this first half of the film?
I think that it gets to the point quickly. The script is very tightly written, so
Mm.
there's no extra bits that kind of make it draggy. So I think I like that about this film. It gets straight to the point.
It's a tight movie. Like that's a point that I really noticed when watching this again. It's like everything like happens on its mark, and it moves fast, like from scene to scene, from time to time. It'll just go like straight into it, without, like you said, dragging or having any kind of like filler moments or scene. I think it's like a letdown in the fact that it's weird because I don't think there's enough, like just enough character moments in there to like flesh it out. Like for instance, for Lin, we understand that like she kind of has like a poverty lifestyle and in background. It's just her and her dad doesn't make much money. Obviously, she doesn't work because she's a student, and then she's like kind of breaking her neck to go to the school and is taking any opportunity to have the best education and travel overseas, and that's why the scholarship is like such a huge thing. Um, and then like once it all falls down and she gets caught and she loses that scholarship opportunity, that like little scene with her and her dad where they have the fallout, and even before that when she finds out that her dad is still paying the maintenance fees, and she's just like feels somber for him. Like those like two small scenes are like really perfect and just enough to like fulfill her character. And it's kind of the same with the other characters. Like even Bank, they share the same thing as well, or they're in the same boat, you can say, because it's just him and his mom, and they run this laundry shop, etc., etc. So it's like perfectly planned, like in the script, to be like, we run through the plot really quick, but there's just enough to like care about these people.
Yeah.
Kind of the second half is really like the bigger heist part of the movie. So I guess after Lin gets caught, Grace and her, or pretty much Lin isn't really talking with Grace or the other guy for a while, but then Grace invites Lin for like dinner, and she kind of explains that she needs her help. She kind of like dug herself in a hole, and Pat's parents think that because he has good grades now, it's because of Grace's like tutoring ability, quote unquote, but it's really because of Lin. And so Pat's parents make Grace an offer, saying that they want to ship him. That's awesome. They
Ship
want
him.
to through FedEx. They want to send him to like a university in Boston in the U.S., and they want to send her as well to help him study along the way. And so basically, they need Lynn's help. So in order to even like go to the school, they need to take this test called the STIC, which is basically the SAT and ACT for international students, right? If they want to go to any other school outside of their country. And so Grace offers her to cheat on that test essentially with like a huge sum of money, and they end up like recruiting a bunch of other students. But Lynn is like still kind of against it at this point and says no, and then it has like another epiphany moment looking at clocks and comes up with like a scheme to actually do it. And they make a plan. She ends up agreeing, but like her consensus is that she'll do it if she passes, and she'll go to Boston with them, so she still has an outlet to travel overseas or go to school overseas. So they agree, and Grace and Pot's job is to bring in more customers. They're basically gonna sell the test answers, and Lynn's plan is that she's going to travel to Sydney and take the test, which is 4 hours ahead of time of Thailand. um, or before actually. My bad. Thailand is 4 hours ahead. So when she finishes the test, she'll send the answers to them before they take the test, and then they'll just use the answers to cheat essentially. But the only way to like get the answers out from the testing room is she has to remember each answer on the exam. And there's a bunch. There's like 4 different sections, and each one is like between 30 and 50 like questions or whatever. So she can't do it by herself. So she has to basically try and persuade Bank to help her out. And so meanwhile, Bank is getting prepared to do his scholarship exam, but ends up getting jumped and like wakes up in a landfill, like all beat up and has to go to a hospital. And because of this, he misses the exam and just basically loses the opportunity for that scholarship as well. And then that's when Lin steps in and they have like a scene together and ends up persuading him to join in because now they're both on the same boat. This is their only way to have a better life per se, to travel overseas. So they end up agreeing, and then there's like the planning scene of them trying to, plan out the whole scenario. And then in the midst of that, there's like bad blood that's spilled. Bank finds out that it was Pot who basically hired a hit on him to miss the exam, and that's why he got beat up and ended up in a landfill. But it's like the deed is done situation, and he's like, I have to do this anyway. And so they end up going to Sydney anyway and then doing the test. And it's like super heisty, dramatic scene. But basically what happens is Bank gets caught in the middle of the test right before like the third section. And everything is up to Lin so she has to remember the multiple choice questions as well as the like essay prompt for the test.
Yeah.
And then there's like this whole big chase scene of her trying to like send out the text of answers, etc., etc. So they ended up doing it. The answers are sent over and they get caught. Bank ends up getting caught, like I said before, and he gets like permanently banned from ever taking the STIC.
Mm.
And Lin kind of goes free a bit. Well, they cancel her test score, but I think she's technically able to do it again, but it's not really relevant in the story. But yeah, more bad blood is spilled. Basically, Lin like defriends Grace and Pot, and then like later on, Bank tries to recruit Lin again for like another big heist in order to like make triple the amount of money by doing other tests in Thailand. And she's like, I'm done with that life, essentially.
Yeah.
And then she basically like confesses everything at the very end, about what happened. So that's how it goes.
Yep.
Hey listeners, if you've tuned into more than one episode, you probably know that me and Lee are quite passionate about Asian movies. We actually got to start because we think that movies are meant to be discussed, and there are so many Asian movies out there to be discussed and to be discovered. Honestly, that goes for just about any international film, if you ask me. I've actually had an interest in podcasting before we launched one and decided to share discussions and just launch a podcast of our own. Producing this show couldn't have been easier with Anchor. It's a true one-stop shop for literally everything podcasting. Even if you don't have the tech, Anchor is equipped with in-app recording, a music library, editing some segments, cover art. There's just so much flexibility to do. Even better, they help you distribute your podcast to popular platforms, which is why you guys can listen to us via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you guys are listening. To ice the cake, they even help you monetize your podcast by matching you up with sponsors. You gotta trust me, they literally take care of just about everything. So if you're on the fence, just jump. There's no excuse. Go to anchor.fm or download their app. It's all free to get started today. Yeah, any particularly favorite scenes or characters? Any moments that really kind of catch you?
I like Bank's character arc.
Mm.
I liked how he is the goody two shoes guy, and then basically is the only one left at the end. He's kind of the guy who's left holding the bag, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everyone else kind of got what they wanted, except for Bank, where he kind of loses everything, especially at the end when he's trying to recruit Lin, and she basically refuses him, and he has this like lingering resentment towards everyone because he gets used like, every step of the way. And at the end of the day, like he's the one who loses the most.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he definitely does have like the most interesting arc because I mean to me he starts out as like the most reasonable character or like the most like pure hearted character, right? I mean he's on the same boat as Lin in being like, it's only him and his mom, single parent and is like both in poverty and they don't have as much opportunity compared to everybody else in the school. Like Grace and Pat come from rich families, right? And they have like basically their life on track. And so they have to rely on their academics and their smartness to like make their own opportunity. And then for Bank, it's you know he doesn't want to do he doesn't he wants to do everything like right and like reasonable. So that's why he like snitches in the first place during the first exam. That's why he tells the headmistress, and he puts Lin in that situation for the worst.
Yeah.
But like his back is covered anyway, and then because of like whatever the next heist and Pat ends up hiring the hit on him, like that sucks for Bank. So like like nothing is like his fault per se or intentionally anyway. He's like, oh, I finally have this opportunity, and then the opportunity goes down the drain because life kicked his butt. And then now his only option is to do that Sydney thing, that Sydney cheating to carve a new way out.
Yeah.
And then again he gets kicked to the curb because he's the one that gets caught during that, right? So he again gets the short end of the stick. And then at the very end he kind of turns into the bad guy because like all he can rely on is just like cheating his way through life now.
Yeah.
Trying to like get money rather than relying his academics. So it's interesting to see like it's like that Batman quote, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Yeah.
And he just kind of turns into the prick at the end. It's like, oh. And then but it's like the opposite for Lin, right? She kind of does things self-centeredly and then kind of realizes her mistakes at the end and fesses up,
Yeah.
does like the quote unquote right thing.
Yeah, I like the dynamic between Lin and Bank. Just the fact that they kind of have a chemistry between each other and their roles are reversed by the end of the film.
Right.
And I just love the fact that Lin basically dips after she realizes and kind of leaves Bank, to his own devices. And I think that's a very interesting way of ending the film where like she's just kind of leaves him, she's like, I'm not about this life anymore.
Yeah, she dips out on everybody. Like first Grace and Pot, she's like, I'm out. And then she goes back to Bank because like there is that chemistry there, so she cares about him. She's like, oh wait, you're like a total jerk now. Like I don't want to be a gangster anymore.
You're the one that basically ruined his life, and
Right,
I feel like
right.
she doesn't really take the responsibility or she doesn't really understand what she did to this person,
Right.
After confession or whatever, like, yeah, it's great, that's good for you, but like you still ruined somebody's life, you know what I mean? And there's no real answer to how you're going to remedy that part, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very weird ending,
goes.
I think, where she's like, I'm done with this life, like I'm gonna let go. She still has like blood metaphorically on her hands, like there's people who suffered or who has to pay the consequences of your actions. And it's and I'm not saying it's all Lin's fault, you know what I mean? Because Bank decided
nothing
to
is
do
like
it on of his own volition as well.
Yeah.
But given the story and the arc and the things that have happened, it just feels a little
yeah, like cheated a little bit or just like backstabby kind of. I mean, like it ends on like an open note because you never know what like comes of it. Like she confesses, so you never know like what is the aftermath of her like revealing everything.
Right.
But yeah, it's like Lin is a very self-centered character, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, everything she does is for her own good.
Even at the end, like even confession, is because of
that
her
is a selfish choice.
Yeah.
Because even like Bank says, you either do this job or I'm gonna blackmail you and I'm gonna come out with everything and you're gonna go down with me,
Mm-hmm.
which she does anyway.
Yeah.
Like my impression is he, that was just a bluff on his part, and at the end he wasn't the one that did it. She was the one that confessed anyway.
Yeah.
So therefore, that was her selfish, kind of act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she could have just walked out and then like taken the hit if he ended up actually confessing,
Mm-hmm.
but instead she turns around and knocks over that domino first. Yeah, I mean I think those aspects are definitely my favorite and most interesting to me is between Lin and Bank. Because I mean, even throughout the story, like it's just an interesting dance between there's an underlying chemistry between them, but then what you see and how like their relationship develops and the story goes, it's like a constant tick for tack kind of scenario where they're like kind of friends at first, like very briefly actually, and then they become rivals, and then he tries to help her out, and then she loses a scholarship, and then she asks him to help out because he lost a scholarship and now they're on the same boat, but she like brings out like you're the one who you're the reason why I lost a scholarship, so therefore you kind of have to do this for me. She like uses that against him, and then the same thing happens later on when he finds out that the reason why he got beat up was because of them. And so he's like, well, it's because it's your fault that I'm in this situation, so now we have to do that.
Yeah.
They're constantly blaming each other for like motivational reasons.
Yeah.
So I think that was pretty interesting in the story.
I like the little moment where she is at the stage, like in backstage with Bank, and she's like talking about his appearance, and she's like, "Oh, you look so, disheveled. Let me help you with your hair and stuff." I like that moment because it's kind of a callback to the moment when Grace does the same thing to Lin, right? She's like, "Oh,
Right.
you need to look pretty for the picture and stuff like that." And it's interesting because it kind of shows that basically Lin's just copying Grace's way of kind of getting close to somebody and using that. So it kind of feels like Lin is not much of a extroverted, outgoing type. So she kind of learned that from Grace.
Yeah, but in that scene, she's like, she is the extroverted.
Exactly,
kind of
she's using that
type.
what she learned from Grace basically to be sociable.
Mm-hmm. It's a Lin's like personality arc is interesting in the story too, because I mean the very first scene, right? It's like the fake interrogation when they're like the story goes back and forth between like the past per se and like real time, which is you think that they're all being like interviewed or like for like a deposition.
Yeah.
They're all being like in a deposition but then it turns out that they were just planning for a deposition if they got caught. And like in that scene, she's kind of like a hard-boiled egg in a way, right? She talks quite a bit, but she has like a confidence when she talks. But then as you see her through the story, she's just this like shy kind of nerdy kid. And then along the way she turns into this like more of like into the life of being a criminal kind of person. You know what I mean? But it's interesting to just like see like how steadily and like under the nose that you don't even notice it per se until the end that you're like, oh, she was once like this shy girl who was kind of like nerdy, but then she turns into like this really self-centered character that uses things to her advantage. So that was a pretty cool thing to see. Yeah, what did you think of that twist, that kind of like deposition thing? You're like, oh,
when I first saw the moment when the people beat up Bank, I was like, are you seriously gonna beat up a student just because he like raised your mirror a little bit? Like it's a little bit too much for that, right? Like I was like, that's a little too much.
Fishy.
And so like that was a weird moment. And then later on it gets revealed that Pat did that to him.
Yeah.
So it made sense. It was like, okay. I was like, dude, that's going pretty far. Like you're about to kill this kid.
And he just like wakes up in the most random place, like
Like, yeah,
like in a
landfill.
landfill. Yeah. Like I thought he was gonna get beat up and just I don't know. I thought he just woke up like on a nearby trash
Hmm.
dumpster or whatever, like on the street. But like, nah, this guy's. They put him in his van and threw him out somewhere.
Yeah. But you can tell that they really prepared a lot for this film in terms of
Hundred
storyboarding
percent.
and stuff. And I think the editing in this film really is well done, well paced, and also
Mm,
there's a lot of nice transitions that they use that are nice too.
agreed. Yeah.
Like there's this one moment when Lin is doing the piano thing on the
Oh yeah,
table,
yeah,
and then it cuts to the moderator's hand, and it like cuts to
yeah.
him, stuff like that. And I think a film like this really requires a lot of pre-planning for the shots because
Mm,
of the subject matter, and I think they talk about it a bit too. But just because it's a very mundane thing
yeah.
to be taking tests and stuff like that, to make that more engaging and make it more suspenseful, you kind of
Mm,
require a lot of tricks.
you have to. You have to like. Yeah, you have to like really plan it out and know what you want and know what you're
Hmm.
doing beforehand. Yeah, there. I read that too. That they. I mean, he was saying that for the most part, everything was storyboarded and planned out. I mean, and like some things between the actors were like improvised. Like the chemistry between them was actually never in the
Hmm.
script, nor his intention. That just kind of came out through the actors
Yeah.
and what they did. And that they were saying that, namely, in when they were shooting in Sydney, that they were, they kind of like veered off the storyboard a little bit and kind of like improvised some shots with the cinematographer and such. But like that scene alone, where it's there, she's taking the test, in Sydney, and like that's like a 30-minute scene of like literally just test taking with like no dialogue. And like that alone is like 200 shots of like 4 pages of script. He
Yeah.
said, and I mean it does take severe planning, because you know if you break it down, all you're watching is her take a test. And you're trying to make it suspenseful. You're trying to make it engaging. You're trying to tell a story and like progress through just visuals. And it's like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And it's just like a naturally hard thing to do. And every time I watching this for my second time, I really applaud it for just keeping it interesting, like really all the way through. There really isn't a beat that you're like kind of snoozing.
Yeah.
They really shake it up. Props to them. Props to them. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's interesting. Lots of sweat, man. Lots of fake sweat going through. No, I liked a lot of the shots. There was one shot when they're, I think, like the second part of the test, and they sat down, and then it's like this ovulating shot. They like started like at a Dutch shot and then pulling back, and then they like rotated it,
Mm.
like revealing Bank.
Yeah.
I was like, that was really cool. And it did like the. It's funny because they just mix a lot of like Hollywood-esque shots. Like they threw Spike in there. Spike Lee
Yeah.
did like the rolling dolly
Yeah.
shot
Yeah.
when she
Towards
has
the
like the
piano.
epiphany. Yeah, yeah. Just little things like that. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. Definitely very stylized.
Mm. I really like that sequence when it cuts back and forth between, she's like, oh, I can memorize this through, the same piano lesson that I taught myself.
Mm.
And it goes back and forth between, her doing it and then her actually playing it on the piano.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like the pace and the severity speeds up when the moderator's like, you got 5 minutes left. She's like,
Yeah.
oh.
I also like the whip hands from like Thailand to Australia,
Yeah.
and like they whip, making it seem like it's connected. Stuff like that.
Mhm.
It's nice.
I think my only gripe with this movie is realizing just how far and extreme that like test security guy went to hunt her
Yeah.
down. Like
Him
he
him
followed
and
her.
him and like during the bathroom scene for Bank. Like
Yeah,
who
yeah.
is gonna go into the bathroom just because the guy is in the bathroom for that long? It's not even that long.
Right.
He was just in there within the time limit too. It's not like he went over the time limit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's
like,
Yeah,
you're in the bathroom for too long. Get out. No one does.
we got a report that someone said you're in here for too long. It's like, what? Yeah, it's funny because like you know that he's like fucked in that scene. Like, there's no way he's getting out of it.
Yeah.
But then for them to like kind of keep dragging it out and to be like, he never even barged in during the middle. He just like kept knocking on the door, which just gave Bank unlimited time to like fumble around, you know? And he tries flushing the phone down the toilet. Like, why? Like, what is the process of thinking?
Yeah. What a funky scene. You know, I love the guy, the Australian dude, who was like, hey, what? Do you know that moment?
Oh,
Second moment.
When he cuts him off.
When thing, Bank is going into the bathroom, and that guy is just like... That stood out to me so much for some reason.
No, the same for me. Like, what? What's wrong? What?
It's like so out of place.
Why did they get like a Russian guy to be in Australia as the moderator? That was so left field for me. I was like, you just need someone that's like really tough and like educated looking, so you just got a Russian dude.
Yeah.
That whole scene of like him chasing Lin down through like the subway. I was like, there's no way that a test moderator is gonna hunt this one girl down.
And how do you know she was in the subway too?
Exactly. Like, not once did he see her face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he had no way of knowing that would have been.
Or like he didn't even see her go into the subway station. You know what I mean?
Exactly. She left the building through the side door, and then
he didn't know. He didn't know. He was like, I'm just gonna go check.
I'm outside.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody.
So
we're gonna brush that.
I mean, it doesn't really matter towards the overall story, I guess, but
right. You gotta make suspense somehow.
It's the thing of where like this would never happen in real life. That's the thing, you know?
Right.
But
right. Yeah.
In terms of a story, in terms of a film, you know, it's fine.
Right. It adds to the stake. It's whatever. But I mean, everything before that is fine.
I mean, like, there's so many different things, especially when kids are taking exams, like for SATs example. Some kids just stay in the bathroom the whole 10, 15 minutes, you know? Or like other kids just stay in the classroom the whole time. And there is never a point where a moderator goes to the bathroom and is like, hey, why are you there for 10 minutes, you know?
Exactly. No one is going to pay attention to, like, notice that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not taken that seriously.
Unless the dude, like, blatantly makes it obvious that he looks like he's cheating. Well, maybe Bank was doing that a little bit, but I don't think anybody would snitch on that, though, you know?
Yeah, no. None of the students.
Especially when you're like when you're abroad and you're with people like that are complete strangers. Strangers probably wouldn't do that, you know. Unless that guy really had to go to the bathroom and there's no other bathroom toilets left.
Yeah, it's a scenario.
Yeah.
It's whatever. What do you think? I mean, what do you think of the heist overall? Like, I mean, a big thing of the heist genre is coming up with like smart and witty plans, right? And kind of like the main formula that's entertaining is like, oh, that's a smart way of doing that. You know what I mean?
I think it was fun. I think it was interesting. Definitely Grace having a father who owns a printing company for pencils happened to help a lot. You know, like, it's just it's
so specific,
perfect coincidence to have. But I mean, it was fun. I liked it. I liked the barcodes on the pencil. The piano thing is a little bit too much, I think. Like, you don't have to.
That was like,
you don't have to do the whole piano thing, you know. Like, you could just
literally, like, a finger could have represented a letter and just been like A, like
index a tap
is A,
or like
middle is B.
1, 2, 3, 4. You have 5 fingers. You can.
Yeah, like learn Morse code or something.
Yeah, like you didn't have to do the piano thing per se.
Right.
But I mean, I think it's a nice way of visualizing, so I'll give it a pass.
Mm.
Like the piano
It's
thing.
it's yeah, yeah. It is a good visual like for the story, and it is like it adds to sort of the, you know, the necessary like complex of like making a plan.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like it adds like, oh, that's kind of cool, or like in that factor. But in retrospective, it's like, all right, this is a little, this is a little much.
Yeah, but I did like the general setting of the standardized tests and the testing environment and stuff. It's very similar to what I remember as a kid,
Right.
doing
Yeah.
SATs and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And the having set A and set B tests where it's like two different tests.
Oh yeah, they're like that was pretty smart, and everybody like freaked out. You're like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
your entire plan goes to shit.
you just need to copy the person across like a diagonal from you.
Oh man. And she's just like two, and everybody's like one.
Yeah.
And Pat like just basically keeps flicking people off.
Mm.
And he's like, I have one. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was smart. I thought it was good. I mean, again, especially for just like the subject matter and how to like make this heist movie out of studying. Like it was really smartly done to kind of make those scenarios, even as kind of over the top the piano thing was. But
Thing is, from what I remember though, even standardized tests like in the movie they say that was it S tick that
yeah,
standardized test is the same all around the world and they
mm,
take it at the same time. But I feel like for SATs, at least from what I remember, they have different versions of the SATs.
yeah. I remember there like being a couple different
Yeah,
versions.
like during the session. So like you can't really do that even if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Like the
Right,
plan that they had relied on the fact that it's the same test, right?
exactly.
But it's not like that in real life. So even if you went
There's
to
no,
Australia,
yeah.
you probably would have been screwed.
Yeah, no, I mean, only like a percentage of those kids would have like been able to use the answers. It would have never been guaranteed that every single person
And you would
would have
have to
it would have been the
verify
same
that it
test.
is the same one that you have,
Yeah,
which would be
there's just no way.
impossible because the kids who are taking the test later won't be able
Exactly.
to do anything about that, you know?
Once you get that test, you're done. You're like, oh, I don't have set A, so now I guess I'm just gonna fail.
Yeah, either you copy the answers and just fail or, you know.
Yeah, that would be like you would have to travel to like however many sets of tests per country. Like if there's 3 sets, you'd have to travel to like 3 different countries or take the test 3 times and hope you get A, B, and C.
Which what if you
And
get
then
3 A's or
right, so that even that's a gamble. Like it'll take you like who knows how long to even get all 3.
yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, it would have just been impossible.
But it makes for a fun movie if this were,
Yeah,
you know.
legit.
Mhm.
Nah, it's interesting. Yeah, and then like by the end, she's like, I can't even like even if I went to Boston with you guys, you know that in college, like not everything is multiple choice, so not like this would work anyway.
Yeah. But there is multiple choice in in college too though.
Depending on what subject, like
Yeah.
if you're taking English or something, yeah. Then you would all have to like get the same major, and then it would be
Yeah.
too much. No, I mean overall, solid movie, very tight script,
Yeah, very
and it
worth
works.
watching. It's fun. It's a fun watch. Maybe if
Mm.
you ever like have friends over and you have nothing to watch, be like, "Hey, let's watch
It's a
this
good
film."
party movie.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
movie to watch like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good, you know. I mean, if I were to introduce, person to Thai films, this would definitely be like top 5,
Hmm.
top 3, even. This would definitely be a marquee of a movie to show people.
Yeah, like
Uh,
it's definitely one of the more polished films I've seen from Thailand, I think.
yeah. Hmm. And again, like just the very Hollywood inspired it is, and just taking numerous beats and inspirations of heist films, very similar to like here. Like this is like how different than a Fast and the Furious film in a way, or like an Ocean's film.
Yeah.
It's very relatable for people in the West and here in the U.S. to get into because this is kind of like a marquee, entertaining blockbuster film that we kind of know and love, just done by a foreign country. So in that sense too.
Yeah, low barrier for entry for sure into
Yeah, yeah.
Thailand films.
Hmm. And I think it does a good job in doing that, and then doing enough of like it is aware of like itself of this is also meant for like a Thai audience,
Hmm.
and it doesn't do like it doesn't really forget about like its origin. I mean it does enough to be like this is kind of like the people, the culture, and how we kind of talk as well. I think my main thing was seeing like reading the subtitles and like understanding the fluctuations in conversation, and when one person is sad or one person is happy, and kind of like the tonality of the conversation
Hmm.
versus like watching them actually speak kind of like varied a little bit, just like the way that in English how we would kind of express conversation was a little different of how they did it. And sometimes I was like on the fence of like, I don't know if this is bad acting or just how they kind of like conversate in that sense. No gripe to like the film or like the language or anything, but it was just kind of like a thing that I was kind of noticing while watching it.
Cultural
Yeah.
differences,
Mhm.
conversational differences.
Yeah. But those are the things that, I think are definitely key when watching a foreign film.
Yeah.
One of the people's languages. So we talk differently, we express differently. Yeah, I mean, overall, great movie.
Yeah, this is a film that I
Uh,
would definitely recommend people to watch. It's a fun,
yeah,
easy film to digest. So,
it's a popcorn flick, guys. It's definitely a popcorn flick. Our next one would be a kind of a popcorn flick too. Unbak, all action. Anybody can get into action. Heister action, low barriers, right there.
in this film, the guy who is the actor, Tony Jaa, he does all of his stunts for reals.
Oh, really?
He's kind of like the Jackie
So-
Chan of,
yeah. I was gonna say that of Thailand.
but he's a lot more brutal in how the action is.
Sure, sure.
So when you
Kind
watch
of
it,
like
you're
the
just
raid
like,
a little bit.
damn, like that looks like it hurts, or you're just like, dang, this dude's superhuman.
Man, by the end of that guy was like black and blue.
And you didn't watch this film, right?
No, not this
So
one.
yeah, I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
But we will see you then from Black. Pieces.
Bye.